انت ما بتستاهل تكون كده يا السودان، معلش حكموك ناس الجيش، انت ما بتستاهل الحظ ده. يا سودان معلش حكموك ناس الجيش، انت ما بتستاهل تكون كده يا سودان، معلش حكموك ناس الجيش، انت ما بتستاهل الظلم ده. انت كنت زراعة الليلة فيك مجاعة، انت كنت زراعة الليلة فيك مجاعة. يا سودان من وين لوين الحالة دي حتم لمتين، يا سودان من وين لوين ديل حكامك سووا الشين. يا سودان الحب تلقاه، يا سودان الحب تلقاه، ويوما يا حبيب أولادك يرجعوا لك من الغربة. يا سودان الحب تلقاه، يا سودان الحب تلقاه، ويوما يا حبيب أولادك يرجعوا لك من الغربة. يا سودان معلش حكموك ناس الجيش، انت ما بتستاهل تكون كده يا سودان، معلش حكموك ناس الجيش، انت ما بتستاهل الظلم ده. انت كنت زراعة الليلة فيك مجاعة، انت كنت زراعة الليلة فيك مجاعة. يا سودان ما تبقى خراب في حروبك ضاعوا شباب، يا عيونهم ماتوا مات عذاب حيرانة.
Greetings. Hello. Hope you are well today. I'm glad that you've decided to join us for this week's episode of Our Ancestors' Voices, a weekly program sponsored by the All African People's Revolutionary Party. Who else? And we are glad that you're here to join us today for this very critical topic, Cinco de Mayo and dignity. We're going to be talking today about Cinco de Mayo being so much more than just a day for people to drink alcohol and get drunk. It really has nothing to do with that and has everything to do with the anti-colonial history of resistance that Cinco de Mayo represents as an institution for indigenous people of the Western Hemisphere. So we're going to be talking about that. We're glad that you're here to join us for this episode. I am feeling fatigued, but in a good way. Had the opportunity to take a family and friends vacation last week together, 25 people, and had a lot of fun. So that was good. Um, and back now, and just trying to get ready for all of the work that we continue to do. African Liberation Day coming up this month. It's always a big day for us. It's a very big day for me. I joined the All African People's Revolutionary Party on African Liberation Day, 1984, May 25th, 1984, I believe the exact date was. So it's a commemoration date for me of 42 years working tirelessly in this organization. And for me, African Liberation Day is really, it's like how a child feels on Christmas Eve. I still get very excited about it. I start getting excited about it in April, and I'm looking forward to the commemorations we have going on this year. So glad that you're able to join us here, and we'll talk about how you can find out about the African Liberation Day commemoration closest to you. But we give honor and respect to the indigenous people. That's why we do programs like this, because we recognize, as we'll talk about, our theme for African Liberation Day this year is all about solidarity, and we recognize that. In fact, I'm not going to be timid in saying that we have recognized the necessity for international solidarity longer and more consistently than most people. So this is great to see that people are finally, on at least some levels, coming to understand the importance of this topic, of doing events like this. We've come a long way from the days when I just joined the party in 1984, where we were still doing events like this. But back then, people would, always want to ask why. Why are you talking about that? That has nothing to do with us. Blah blah blah. It has everything to do with us. So glad that you're here for that. Talking about institutions of colonial resistance by the indigenous people of the Western Hemisphere, and Cinco de Mayo is certainly that. And of course, we give honor and respect to our African ancestors. They are the reason that we are here. They are the energy that flows through our veins. They are the motivation that gives us uh, all of the desire to keep going. And we are just honored and privileged to have the opportunity to continue the work that they have laid out for us. All of our people who waged this struggle that are no longer here, they're the reason that we're here. So we start as we always do. We just give quick introductions for who we are. Our Ancestors' Voices is sponsored by the All African People's Revolutionary Party, APRP. And the APRP is a revolutionary, independent, mass Pan African political party with its base in Africa. We have a clear objective: Pan Africanism. We are revolutionary organizers. The difference between organizing work and mobilization work is mobilization work, great work, but it's focused on identifying the problem. Organization work is particularly revolutionary organizing work, that has to be said, is different in that it's focused on the solution. So we're revolutionary organizers. So our solution or objective is Pan Africanism. That's what we know to be the solution to the problems African people face all over the world, all 2.5 billion of us in 100 and almost 20 countries around the world. We face all of the problems we face because we are disorganized and disempowered, and Pan Africanism is how we get that power and that organization. So we see the definition of Pan Africanism as one united socialist Africa. That's the solution that we see. That's what we're fighting for. And our work to achieve Pan Africanism, you can learn more about it by studying Kwame Nkrumah's Handbook of Revolutionary Warfare, the front cover, which is displayed on this screen. And this particular program, Our Ancestors' Voices, airs every Sunday for 6+ years now. Every Sunday we've done it. We do it with myself, Ajamu, and Dr. Shakura Umi, my biological, ideological daughter. And so to get us started on today's topic of Cinco de Mayo and dignity, I'm going to turn it over to Shakura.
Thank you, Baba Jamu. Appreciate you. Greetings, everyone. This topic, it means so much to me because I think in the last couple of years, we've been seeing more and more rhetoric targeting African folks, especially as it relates to other issues that are terrorizing other oppressed groups. So we're seeing a lot more rhetoric targeting African folks of why they should not be supporting Palestine, why they should not be supporting the indigenous folks who are under attack, and even some African folks who are under attack when it came to the ICE agents, and how that has nothing to do with us, and how we should mind our business, and all these other really ridiculous rhetorical statements and phrases that have been floating around the internet. And so, to me, this topic is very timely and very relevant to the question now. And the bottom line is, we're giving you this seminar based off of the All African People's Revolutionary Party. And we understand as an organization that in order for African people to be free and have access to their land, control of resources, dignity, humanity, value, respect, things of that nature, that means that our struggle cannot be mutually exclusive to the Palestinian struggle. For one, because the diamonds that are stolen from our land are taken to Palestine to be cleaned because Israel is profiting off of that. So we want Palestinians to get their land back because then they won't be cleaning our diamonds anymore and Israel won't be stealing our diamonds. We want the indigenous people to get their land back because we understand that their struggle, much like ours, they too have lost their land. They have suffered greatly from health issues, just like we have because of loss of land, which equals loss of power. And all of this is connected. There's a reason that every year for African Liberation Day, we invite people to represent these different communities based on the respected organizations that they affiliate with. There's a reason we ask people from the American Indian movement to come and to bless the space by doing a sage. There's a reason that we have our comrades who consistently come from the Arab Resource Organizing Center, aka AROC. Shout out to AROC. Like, there's a reason for that, you all. For the for at least the first 2 decades of my life, I remember having speakers from different Irish socialist organizations coming. And so, again, like, to believe the nonsense that this has nothing to do with you, first of all, you should understand that if you don't belong to the 1%er, you're always going to be under attack. You should just automatically assume that first. Second, you should understand that you're not mutually exclusive. You don't have enough power and value and money to not matter. Like, you just need to understand that. And once you understand that, then I think you'll be in a better position to understand it's too privileged for you to think that it does not affect you. That's way too privileged for you to even think that. Who are you to even think that? Of course it affects you. And of course, your decision to choose not to engage is also affecting the struggle because you're thinking about it individualistically when in actuality, you should have been looking at it collectively from the beginning. Because this entire problem didn't just start with affecting one group of people. This entire problem didn't just start with affecting one person. This entire problem was built off of the oppression of multiple groups of people along multiple locations around the world, taking multiple lands and exploiting multiple groups of their resources, their values, their not consenting to the non-marginalized groups in terms of the assault and the mass sterilizations and all this other stuff that we already know because we've done several seminars on it already. Okay, so that's absurd. I saw a video just yesterday from Godfrey, and I usually really can get down with what Godfrey is putting up for sale, but I disliked that video because I did not care for him endorsing this African woman who said, and I quote, "Why are Africans," I think she might have said African descent, or she may have said Black, I can't remember, but why are Africans supporting Cinco de Mayo? We don't need to be getting drunk and we don't need to be supporting that. And at first I was like, where are you going with this? I don't want to make assumptions. But then she sounded really ignorant when she said, they're not supporting African Independence Day. And I wanted to say, but who are you referencing? Because anybody from the Brown Beret, anybody from the American Indian movement, they will always give credit to learning about the Black Panthers. And literally, the Brown Berets took on their uniform in duplicity of the Black Panthers. That's why they wear the brown beret, literally. That's why they wear it. So that was just dumb. That was so dumb when she said that. And this is exactly why you need to have political education. This right here is exactly why. Because if you don't, You sound dumb, yo. You sound dumb when you say stuff like that, especially when people are listening and they know that it's simply not true. They know that it's simply not true. And more importantly, you're spreading your ignorance like it is a variant of COVID. And that's disrespectful and it's irresponsible. It is irresponsible. Okay. So we need to do better. We need to do better. The so called Mexican people are actually indigenous people of the Western Hemisphere. Like African people, their culture and history has been misrepresented. Okay. And as a general rule, if you think about colonialism, you should understand that systematically, colonialism steals everything from the people that it subjugates, right? Whatever colonialism does not outright steal, it will appropriate. So it is either directly taking your stuff or indirectly. And along with indirectly, it will also gaslight you. That system will also make you, devalue yourself. Excuse me, colonialism will endorse white supremacy and start to make you believe that you are not competent, you are not capable, that you are not qualified, that you are not as intelligent, that you are not as sophisticated, that you are not as valued, that you are not as important. So it's not just physically taking your resources, it is literally stripping you of who you are as a person while also degrading you to the very lowest caliber of how you can be as an individual, where you have no sense of self, you have no sense of purpose, and therefore you have no sense of self-esteem or self-worth. And then you have to constantly battle that every single day, where your psychology of it all is teaching you and reinforcing that you were just not enough every day. That's what happens based on colonialism. And again, I argue that it is taking the direct and physical resources as well as the internal, emotional, mental resources as well, right? Some that we can see and some that we cannot. So, with colonialism appropriating as well as stealing in some cases, Cinco de Mayo is a great example of cultural appropriation. Great example of that. And we're talking about Cinco de Mayo today, but go ahead and couple Cinco de Mayo with St. Patrick's Day. Let's just go ahead and do that. Our comrade here on the Zoom mentioned that my anniversary of defending my dissertation was last year. I graduated last year on this same day, on Mother's Day. And I'm so thankful that, a whole year has passed and we're here. And I'm also thinking that that was the day I graduated, but the day I defended was March 17th. And if you were on that Zoom a year ago, you remember me saying the first thing I said, and my advisor didn't understand this, but it didn't matter. That was my presentation. And I wanted to set the tone. And I paid homage to the people of Ireland in the first 12 seconds of my talk, because I wanted the framing to be, yes, we're focusing on African women today, but this whole conversation is about colonialism and power. That's really what this conversation is about. If you wanted to talk about maternal mortality in 10 seconds or less, colonialism, stripping power, and because of that, you were not valued. Like, that's pretty much what it comes down to. That's pretty much what it comes down to. So in the first 10 seconds of me speaking, I dedicated my presentation to the people of Ireland, because they have been struggling for over 1,000 years to get their land back from the British. So yes, we're talking about indigenous folks today, and we're talking about Cinco de Mayo. But don't let your brain get away from the fact that other groups, like people in Ireland, are also struggling with the same thing, the cultural appropriation. They are struggling with that. And it's up to us to encourage ourselves and to educate ourselves, so when we know better, we can do better. Next slide, please. We have a responsibility to have a solidarity with those folks, especially because we know what it feels like to have our culture appropriated. And some of you probably are a part of the problem, where you're appropriating it yourself. So maybe you don't see an issue with that. But I personally work really hard to not be a part of the same issue that is oppressing us. So for those of us that find issues with cultural appropriation, that means we need to be more sensitive to the fact that it is everywhere all the time. And we need to not support any entities that are feeding into that bottom line. We also kind of have to think about what this legacy of disrespect has really built itself on. Think about how the process of colonial domination is so imperative and so dignant and so strong that the process is actually normalized. It is accepted, it is perpetuated, it is promoted, it is practiced, right? Without any questioning of any kind. It is so ingrained in us that it is a part of our ideology when we wake up in the morning, from the moment we wake up to the moment we go to sleep and lay our heads down, right? Like these are the things we have to think about. In other words, most people within the US consider Cinco de Mayo only as a means for alcohol consumption, wearing sombreros, and pretending as if the Mexican/indigenous people have never suffered centuries of this type of disrespect and dismissal. And I just think that for you to be a part of that and to not push against it, you are a part of the problem. And you need to take responsibility for that. And it's very ignorant to say that indigenous people don't celebrate African days and African independence days, because that's a disrespect to our comrade Ernesto Che Guevara. That's disrespectful to, as I said, our comrades from the Brown Berets, our comrades from the American Indian movement, not to mention even other folks that are not indigenous. To this day, I still give homage, and I am so thankful to the work of Yuri Kochiyama and how she tried to save Malcolm X's life after he was shot and killed, right? Like there have been countless examples. I remember during the pandemic, in the first year that the pandemic had really set off and the entire world was shut down, we had there were tweets coming in. It was still Twitter at that time, and I remember there were tweets coming in to BLM members from Palestinians about how to survive if you get hit with tear gas, you all. But when you're not educated politically, because you're not raising your political education, because that's a choice, okay? You can just sit there and be ignorant, or you can do something about it, okay? So if you're not choosing to increase your political education, it's easy for you to forget stuff like that. It's easy for you to displace that. It's easy for you to not hold that and contain that, okay? Because these are all different examples. I just mentioned the Palestinians, I mentioned our Asian descent comrades, and then of course we have numerous examples of indigenous folks who have all showed up countless times for African people. So it is absurd, it is disrespectful, and it is irresponsible to perpetuate that when you know that it's not true. And if you don't know that it's not true, pick up a book, go back and watch our archives of all of the 6 years that we've been doing these seminars and learn something, so that when you know better, you can do better. It is not enough for you to know better and not pass it on. That is unacceptable and irresponsible. Ask yourself, what kind of world do you want to live in, where people have information that can literally help make things better, and they sit on that and they do nothing with it? You might as well be a part of the problem if you are not contributing towards the solution. Again, this is bigger than all of us. We have to think about that, you all. It is bigger than all of us. It is so much bigger than all of us. We are microscopic, as a matter of fact, on the larger grand scheme of things. So we just have to be humble to the fact that we hope that our tiny contribution can actually move the needle and make a difference. But it starts with us. It starts with increasing the political education. It starts with understanding that we have a responsibility to increase that political education. We also need to understand that the indigenous people are counting on us, just like we are counting on them. And it is so much easier for us to unite with indigenous folks, with Palestinian folks, with Asian descent folks. It is so much easier to do that. To unite with people of Ireland, it is so much easier to do that than to try to take this on by ourselves. We're not enough by ourselves, and we shouldn't have to be. We should understand that uniting with other forces is the only way this is going to work. Because as I said earlier, the oppression, the exploitation, and the complete ridicule of all of the lands that I just talked to you about, all of these folks who have been displaced and have been dehumanized, that didn't start with just attacking one group of people. There were strategic plans that took place time and time again. So because the oppressor has been building up how to attack all of us, we should be building up how to resist and how to attack back. To me, that's the best game plan. That is the best game plan. We're not going to be able to do it by ourselves, and we shouldn't have to. Shame on us if we think that's the only way. They have always been there for us. So why would they stop now? And as long as we continue to be there for them, continuing to hold institutions like African Liberation Day, where not only are we asking them to come, but we are grateful and we are thankful when they come, because we understand that their struggle is our struggle. And having that kind of understanding and dismantling the oppression Olympics, That's really what this is all about, you all. That is really what this is all about. So please don't forget to continue to support African Liberation Day. We have, I think, just shy of about 2 weeks left before our institution is coming up. So we are thankful for your donations, and we ask that you keep them coming. And please remember to join an organization that is working for justice. Increase your political education. The time is now. Do not wait until the end of the year. Do not wait until fall. Do not wait until the end of summer. You have now to educate yourself. You have now to change your outcomes and to inform your future.
Ashe, obrigata, asante sana, midasi. Thank you very much. And before I go deeper into talking about what Cinco de Mayo actually is, I just want to build on what you talked about, Shakur. This has to be said, and I think we have to start saying this more and more in this backward ass country. This country would be boring as hell if it were not for African people, indigenous people, Asian people, LGBTQ people. This would be one boring ass place to be. One stale, gray, fall asleep all the time place without all of these folks and the culture and the energy that they bring to our existence. And I'm not saying that to disrespect European people in this country, because I've traveled to 5 or 6 countries in Europe, and I don't extend that to Europe. It's the white people here in this country that I'm talking about, and that's because they have accepted this lie that they don't have a culture. I hear it all the time from European people here who claim to be conscious. We don't have a culture. There's no human being in human history who doesn't have culture. Culture is your ability to function, to take what you understand based on the experiences of people who come from the same background as you, and to define your existence in the world through expressing those experiences. So there's no possible way someone cannot have culture. The problem there is that the European masses in this backward ass country have accepted the lie that their culture is the same as capitalism. So everything connected to capitalism is defined in their backward thinking minds as white culture. So that's the reason why the minute we say something like African Liberation Day or Juneteenth or reclaiming Cinco de Mayo for the indigenous people, so many Europeans in this country see that as an attack. Well, we're not attacking you, dumbass. We're attacking the backward nature of this capitalist colonial society that we live in. That's what we're attacking. So this society would be so damn useless and boring without the colonized people within it. And I'll give you a quick example. Like I said, I went on this family vacation, and every phase of it, the vote of the family and the friends, they wanted to go on a 5-day cruise. So that's what we did. So we were there, and if you've ever done that, or if you haven't done it, you spend a lot of time. There's so many activities, right? So we would go, like the first night we were there, we did karaoke, and we had, the whole 5 days we were on the ship, we had all these people would see any of us and they would say, you all made last night fun, because we were just acting a fool. We were having a good time. Several of us, including myself, sang songs individually. And then at the end, 15 of us went up and we sang We Are Family, the song by Sister Sledge. And for some reason they wanted me to have the microphone, even though there were 15 of us up there. So I have the microphone, and there's a portion of the song in the chorus where Sister Sledge sings, "We are family. I got all my sisters with me." I'm sure you've heard it. It's an iconic song. And since I had the mic, instead, I was singing, "We are family. I got all my sisters and my brothers and non-binaries with me." And people caught on to it and they started singing it. A whole bunch of people started singing it the way I was singing it, and cheering and clapping. See, this is an example of what I'm talking about. Our experiences gives us the vision to be creative that way. And that type of creativity, that type of resistance is what makes things exciting. That's what people like. That's what people get excited about. Because it's the truth, number one, and people crave the truth. And then number two, it's just a way to awaken our humanity. Instead of us just going along like these clowns in these pictures on the screen, just going along with something we don't understand and just doing something. So this place would be absolutely worthless. The only thing that makes it worthwhile is us. And it's important to say this because some of us have accepted this backward propaganda that we somehow owe something to your European Judeo-capitalist culture, that we have to fit in with it. We have this would be nothing, absolutely nothing without us. The only thing worthwhile here is our existence and the humanity that we infuse in it every single day that we continue to exist in this cesspool. We infuse humanity in it, and that's the only thing that makes it worthwhile. That's the only thing that makes it interesting. That's the only thing that makes it worth dealing with. I mean, can you imagine if the only thing that was happening here, I mean, I think about like how things were before the civil rights movement, when every time you turned on the TV, you just had, it was just all European people, all crew cuts, all that. And even a lot of that stole from our various cultures. If you look at like I Love Lucy, for example, Lucille Ball, there's so much appropriation in that, subtle appropriation. There's so much in that. There's so much in all of that. So even when they got it right, a lot of that was because of how much they leaned on and stole from our way of interpreting things. And, of course, we took it to a whole new level. So that's why it's important to understand the institutions that we have and what they represent, and why it's important that we respect them and reclaim them. So in the instance of Cinco de Mayo, it has an actual history. The history of it was not when some restaurant bar opened and started serving drinks. The history of Cinco de Mayo goes back to 1862, when the people of Mexico rose up and defeated French invaders who came to the country with the intent on recolonizing the country. It had already been colonized by the Spanish. And now these French came because they basically looked at the entire world, all of these countries in Europe. They looked at the entire world as a supermarket where they could pick goods and own them. They didn't even pay for them like you do in the supermarket, just seize it and own it, steal it. And so that's what happened with the French in 1862. And the battle went on for a few years. But the importance of it is Mexico, despite having far inferior weaponry, not having the quality of weaponry that the French had, who had, at that time, state-of-the-art weapons, the Mexican people basically just had the will to claim their dignity. And they were able to defeat France. And that's what Cinco de Mayo represents, because it was the 5th of May, 1870, that the people of Mexico were able to declare victory on this invasion. So the indigenous people of that region, of course, have a long history of righteous resistance. And Cinco de Mayo, you should see that as falling within that tradition. So when May 5th comes around each year, you shouldn't be thinking of, like, what am I going to order to drink? What kind of drink, what Cinco de Mayo drinks? I mean, you can do that. I'm not saying don't enjoy your life. What I'm saying is that the first thought for Cinco de Mayo should be, this day represents a symbol of resistance for the indigenous people of the Western Hemisphere. So on May 5th last week, I was with family. We were at a Mexican restaurant and we were eating, and some of the people were ordering drinks that they had, to specify the day or whatever they do. I don't do alcohol, so I don't really know how that works, but that's what they were doing. And, I did what I always do. I said, so what is Cinco de Mayo? And of course, no one knew. So then I'm, talked about it the way I'm talking to you about it right now. And I see that as my responsibility as a conscious African revolutionary. And when I do that, when I did it last week, people were like, oh, okay, I didn't know. They thought it was just a day, a made up holiday. In fact, someone said that it's just a made up holiday. I'm like, no, it has an actual history. You just think that because you don't know the meaning of it, and all you see people doing on May 5th every year is drinking alcohol. So that's why you would say that. And it's important to know this history. You don't have to read it, the volumes of literature that I read. Most of you are not going to do that, but you should at least know something about it. Like for example, in 1829, Mexico's Afro-Mexican, he was an African president, Vicente Guerrero, outlawed slavery, right? That happened in 1829. And if you understand, slavery existed 35 years after that in this backward cesspool country. So, what that meant is for Africans who were still enslaved to this country, Mexico became a bastion of freedom for them to escape. And since a lot of these southern states bordered Mexico, it was logical that Africans would have a vision of getting to Mexico because they knew they could be free. In states like Louisiana and Texas, this was clearly the case. So that's what happened. And because of that, a large number of Africans ended up in Mexico. And as people always do in terms of human evolution and culture, begin to, intermix with people there. And a lot of these people today talking about, well, Africans have always been here, they're confusing that with the history I'm talking about. Of course, there were some Africans here. There were some of every people everywhere. People traveled and traded. Africans did it. Indigenous people did it. Asian people did it. People from Europe did it. If you want to know the significance of the Norse people, what they call the Vikings, they certainly were out before Columbus exploring the world, along with all the rest of us. So there were certainly people there, but to argue that that represents the majority of African people in the U.S. today, I mean that's just you have explosive rocks floating around between your ears. I mean, I saw a video today of some clown, and he was trying to make a mathematical argument about how slavery could not have happened because of the number of ships it would have required. And I'm listening to that. I can only listen to it for about 30 seconds and I had to turn it off. And I'm thinking, all you have to do is open a couple of books and you would know that, the insurance companies got rich. The entire insurance industry got rich by uh, or insuring the slave ships. So the record is there, right? That's not disputable. The record was there. That's how all the big insurance companies today, Aetna, AIG, New York Life, that's how they all started. The white man's not going to lie and say they started from money from slavery and create all these false records for our benefit. I mean, that's you have to be just a complete fool if you don't understand that there's more to it than just what's floating around in the, the bumpiness between your ears. If you don't understand this, so this is what happened in Mexico. So Africans escaped to Mexico and Canada. The entire African community in Canada, other than, I'm not talking about recent years, immigrants from the Caribbean and Africa, but over time, people that are like in places like Nova Scotia in Canada, and they'll tell you, or the Toronto area, and they'll tell you that their families have been there for generations. That's people who escaped from chattel slavery here in the United States of America, same as Mexico, right? So this is important for us to understand. That's the history of Cinco de Mayo. And if we go to why that's important, right? The importance of it is we should see Cinco de Mayo. It's right up there with the 300 slave revolts that African people carried out in the Western Hemisphere, which is the reason that the chattel slavery institution was eliminated, because the slave revolts made the system untenable. There were two things that made it untenable, but European history only tells us one, if they even tell us this, because most of the time what we get is that, well, the Civil War freed us, Abraham Lincoln freed us, which is absolute nonsense. It's as stupid to say that as it is to say the U.S. military gave us the rights that we have today because of what wars they've engaged in. I saw something today that made perfect sense to me. A young European woman, was saying that the reason why they call it the Afghanistan War, the Iraqi War, the Vietnam War, the Iran War, etc., is because if they called it what it really was, every war would just have to be called the U.S. War. And that's absolutely correct, what she said. But again, these slave revolts were happening. Aside from the fact that Northern capitalists wanted to industrialize the South, that was a big reason too. That's why the North pushed for the eradication of slavery. That's why Lincoln wanted to sign the Emancipation Proclamation. It had absolutely nothing to do with us. But also, a very big reason is that these people all knew that the institution was not tenable. The only people that thought it could always continue were the dumbass rednecks in the South. And that's what they were. Yeah, that's what a lot of them still are today. They thought that they could continue to have slavery for years, and there were some of the white people that were smart enough to know, like these slave revolts are getting harder and harder to maintain, and they knew that. That's why they made it legal, the law that white men in the southern states like Georgia had to belong to state militias. That's why the Second Amendment was written in the first place. If you read the history, that's where the Second Amendment came from, as well as the creation of police departments. So, this is the history. This is Cinco de Mayo was right up there with all of that I just said. The Lumbee indigenous ethnic groups, defeat of the KKK in Mississippi in 1857, right up there with that. The Labode defeat of the British in Ghana, right up there with that. And all the examples, the Kakongo resistance against colonialism, up and down the west and central coast of Africa. This is all a part of our resistance against colonialism. The Plains Indians in this country and their battle against the invasion of their lands, Crazy Horse and the Lakota people, all of these things represent our resistance to colonialism. Shakura talked about the British resistance the Irish resistance to British imperialism and colonialism, the resistance of the Filipino people in southern Philippines, Mindanao, in that region against neocolonialism. All of these things are sources of pride for us. We stood up, but if you don't know the history, you'll believe their narrative that, well, we just accepted it. We just accepted persecution and oppression. We didn't do anything against it. There are always many of us who refuse to accept oppression, just like there's many of us today who refuse to accept oppression. And there have also been many of us who saw oppression and thought of it as an opportunity where we could gain some sort of resources out of it, even though it was happening to us. There have always been people like that, and there are still people like that today, because this is a class struggle that we're engaged in. We're not all on the same side of history. I'm not rooting for everybody black. Some of these folks will sell us out with a second if they see some dollar signs behind it, and those people need to be dealt with. It's just that simple. So this type of history of anti-colonial resistance has to be lifted up, and nobody's going to do it except us. So if we allow them to make Cinco de Mayo a get drunk day, if we allow them, because they're trying to do it with Juneteenth, make it kind of the same type of thing, because at some point, this is what happens. They'll recognize, like, they're still resisting Juneteenth. They're still, all these sick and insane white people in this country, it's a made-up holiday. Like, what holiday is not made up? Christmas is a made-up holiday. Name one holiday. All of them, somebody sat down and said, "Oh, let's do this," and call a holiday. So anybody saying that, any of your family or friends saying Juneteenth is a made-up holiday, you would be within your rights to respond to them by saying, "You know what? You're the most dumb, stupid ass, no good basticle on the planet Earth." That's what I say to him. I was in a restaurant and I have Juneteenth on my computer. He's like, "That's a made-up holiday." And I didn't even look up. I said, "You're dumb as hell." "I'm not dumb as hell." I mean, "Yes, you are. You just proved it. You're stupid as hell." And he says, "I said, I don't talk to stupid people. Keep it moving." I mean, we got to deal with these people. I'm not giving him no audience. I'm not listening to him. That's the problem now. So used to everything centering around you. Kiss my black African pristine ass. That's what you can do for me. And the more of us that start dealing with them like that, we'll have a whole lot less problems. But we're the ones that have to lift up our anti-colonial history and be proud of it and study it and understand it. It's essential that we do this. It is absolutely essential that we do this because it creates a critical component. And that component is that the capitalist system relies upon us believing that we can never defeat them. That's their major weapon that they have against us, is convincing us that they are invincible and that nothing we can do will ever defeat them. So the only option we have is to fall in line and figure out how we can get a piece of the pie that they're carving up. That's their entire strategy. And if you think about it, people that you love and admire and respect who believe that there's no, like, all you have to do, if you don't know it, is just experiment. Just go to any social setting and just go off. Do it on purpose. Just say, you know what, this capitalist system is decadent. We need a revolution tonight. We need to just talk like, just say that. That's all you got to say. And I guarantee, I'll bet you money, somebody who you're talking to will say, well, that'll never happen. They have all the guns. We'll never be able to do that. Somebody will say that. Some of you believe that. We'll never be able to win. We can't defeat them. Some of you, they've convinced you that we cannot win, that all we have to do is somehow figure out a way to coexist with all this nonsense. It's the same when people say that to me. What I tell them, it's like telling me that I have to coexist with rabies or coexist with AIDS or coexist with cancer. Like, if there's cancer in a bucket next to me, the best option I have is to put my hands in it and splash it all over my body so that I have it. There's nothing I can do to defeat. That's how you sound to me when you talk like that. That's crazy talk. That's insane talk. But that's what they want us to believe. And the whole point of these institutions, like Cinco de Mayo, is to demonstrate to us that we have other options. We can create our own options. When France invaded Mexico and they had the Battle of Pueblo, the people of Mexico were not sitting there thinking, well, we don't have the right weapons. Jose over there is not going to fight, so I shouldn't fight. Maybe I can get a job from the French. Maybe I could start going around telling people we should be listening to the French. There were some of them doing that, but obviously not the majority. The majority of people were on the right side of history and said, get the hell out of our country. So now here we are in 2026, and we have the same situation facing us. Some of us are going along like, well, the master's speaking. I'm trying to see how I can, whatever way I can get on the side of the master. And the master's telling them, you go tell them Negroes that they need to not be rebellious and get in line with our leader. Yes, sir. I'm going to go tell them right now. I'm going to tell them, ooh, don't be doing nothing to upset the master. And there's plenty of Negroes out here. There's plenty of coons out here doing that. But there are more of us who are on the side of justice. And so the reason why we're on the right side of justice is because we at least have a high enough understanding of our own anti-colonial institutions that have been created for us to recognize that we are full human beings. We have dignity and we have the right to stand up for ourselves. And the people who know and understand that the best that's where you're going to find the people who represent the highest level of dignity that we have among us. And that's a beautiful thing. So we should uplift any institution, whether it be Cinco de Mayo, whether it be the Battle of Little Bighorn, where Crazy Horse defeated Custer. We should always lift up things like that. The Lumbee Indians defeating the Ku Klux Klan, the Deacons for Defense and Justice shooting the Klansmen in the face. We should lift all of that up. The Maroon communities, y'all saw the movie. I don't remember the name of the movie, but it was Lakeith Stanfield, Regina King, Idris Elba, and they were it was a Western, whatever, you know what movie I'm talking about. And then they had an indigenous brother in their group. That was a maroon group. The Rufus Buck Gang. That's who they were. Idris Elba played Rufus Buck in the movie. That was a real thing, you all. It was a maroon community of Africans and indigenous people who fought against the colonizers in this country. You got to know that. It's not just a movie. It was real. It was a real thing. They weren't criminals as they depicted in the movie. They were real people who were fighting for our liberation. That, if we know that, it's uplifting to us. But if we don't know it, then capitalism will redefine it for us. It'll make us think that Rufus Buck is Idris Elba in a Regina King movie, and they're a bunch of criminals. We'll believe that. If we don't know our history, we'll think that Malcolm X was assassinated because he talked about Elijah Muhammad having children out of wedlock, and that was it. That's the whole story. Some African people in the Nation of Islam were jealous of Malcolm. We'll believe that because that's what capitalism wants us to think. And that was in the movie Malcolm X. So we'll believe that. If we don't know our history, we'll think Cinco de Mayo is just, what drinks are available on May 5th and getting what they call what is it that you have in the afternoon, happy hour, so you can get more drinks at a cheaper price. You'll think St. Patrick's Day is green beer, and that's all you'll understand about these things. You'll think that Thankstaking is eating all the food and getting so bloated that you can't even walk, and that's all that there is to it. You'll believe all of this. And people who believe everything I just said. They believe all of that. They think all of that is what it is because they don't know about these institutions of liberation like Cinco de Mayo, like Juneteenth, like African Liberation Day, like Nakba Day, right? They don't know about all of these. So all they know is what the colonizer told them. And the colonizer told them, no, all this stuff is just about you eating and drinking and getting presents. And that's all there is. That's all you have. So they think, well, that's the best we can get. So I'm just going to hold out for that. And then I'll die and a few years will pass and nobody will remember me. And that's all there is to life. So this is why these types of institutions are so critical. And it's the reason why we are the ones who have to define them. So indigenous people, you have to take Cinco de Mayo back. When I say indigenous people, I'm talking about people that identify as Chicano and Mexicano. You got to take Cinco de Mayo back, and we got to help you. And we got to defend our institutions. We got to defend African Liberation Day. We got to defend Juneteenth. We got to defend what it means. It ain't no damn Juneteenth, ain't no damn holiday for barbecuing, God damn it. It's a day that represents us fighting for our freedom. So if you're not doing a damn thing to fight for our freedom, then just take your black ass to work on Juneteenth and just be the good slave that's the only thing you're good for. Just do that. If you take off that day, it's because you're commemorating our fight for liberation. That's what Juneteenth is. I mean, we got to stop all this bullshit. It's destroying us, and it's making it impossible for our generations that come after us to be in a position to understand who the hell they are so that they don't walk around here like dumbass robots like a lot of us do. That's why it's important. So how should we move? How should we move? People in the U.S., this is going to be a culture of appropriation because the U.S. I remember someone years ago from the American Indian movement was speaking at one of our events. And this person from the American Indian movement said that America is the bastard child of Britain. And I thought, wow, I heard that. That is absolutely correct. That is a perfect. And so, that's the case. Then it's a bastical culture because my mother taught me to, I've said this before, like all the insults are anti-women. And, if you think about it, son of a bee, MFer, douchebag, these are all anti-women insults that you're usually talking about a man, but you're using insults that dehumanize women. So why should we do that? So she didn't use she said bastical. That's what she said. So this is the thing is, that it's the whole point of that is that this country is illegitimate. It's an illegitimate country. And because of that, there's never going to be there's no such thing as American culture. There never can be. Because America, the US, I mean, is nothing but stolen land, stolen labor, and exploitation. That's all it is. So there can't be any culture built on injustice. So everything is going to be appropriate. That's all they can do is steal from all of us. That's all they can do. And that's why the Europeans steal Cinco de Mayo. That's why they steal. Like I was somewhere where I was the only African, and I heard these Europeans talking, and they were talking about just saying everything, like how things that one of them said word. Someone said something. One of them said word, and then I looked, and then the other one said they said something else that is a part of our culture. I mean, even this concept of woke, being woke, that's us that framed that to talk about someone who's aware of the contradictions in this world. And they've turned that around. Like everything they take and steal and distort it. Because it's a bastical society. So it's going to do that. So everything in this country is stolen. Everything. Nothing here is not stolen. And US capitalist pop culture, the only thing that it is suffering and trauma for colonized people everywhere. And it's also suffering and trauma for European people, quiet as that's kept. Because go around, and those of you that are African, indigenous, Asian, etc., you know what I'm talking about right now. When you're around these people, just get a couple of drinks in them, and you see how dysfunctional they are. I'm sorry, I'm not racist. I'm not racist. They can't even stand themselves. They have so much trauma in them because they know this is a backward ass, decadent, evil empire society. And they definitely know that we know that. So that's why they behave the way they do. Right? That's what it's all about. So that's why it's important that we reclaim our institutions. We teach our youth the truth about Cinco de Mayo, Juneteenth, African Liberation Day, Indigenous Peoples Day, Nakba Day, May Day. We teach people the truth about all of these institutions of liberation. May Day is the International Day of the Worker. That was last week, too. It's a day when we talk about workers empowering themselves. And most of the labor unions in this country don't even commemorate May Day. That tells you how backward we are. It's our responsibility to correct that. Because when we know the truth about these institutions of liberation, then that helps us understand the lies about their capitalist institutions, like Thankstaking and Veterans Day and Fourth of July and all their institutions that are designed to keep us in prison to this ideology that we have to support the maintenance of the capitalist system. That's what all those institutions are designed to do. And we don't want to do that. We don't want to do that. And we can't be afraid to tell the truth. You Veterans Day, I mean, we talk about this all the time. What are you doing with that? The reason why people join the military in this country is because they can't find jobs. God damn it. That's the reason why they do it. And it's a way for them to learn some skills and earn a living. Nothing wrong with that, but I'm going to say that. That's the truth. It has nothing to do with fighting for anybody's free. They haven't freed a roach. Anywhere they've gone on earth, not a single roach has been freed. That's a goddamn lie. In fact, all they've done is further imprison the masses of people on the planet and imprison even their own people that go over there as troops because they come back with all this PTSD because they have no way to justify what they did because they should have never did it in the first place. So they're forever in prison in this trauma and oppression. There's no freedom in anything these people are doing. And we got to start telling the truth about that and stop being such goddamn cowards, afraid to offend somebody's feelings. My feelings been offended. I don't give a damn anymore. You're going to get some of that. Let's share the oppression. So lift up Cinco de Mayo in all institutions of liberation. And we thank you for joining us. Come back next week, May 17th. We're going to talk about African Liberation Day, but our slogan this year is Revolutionary Pan-Africanism, and it's in solidarity with all oppressed people. Our struggle is one. So we're going to talk about solidarity with Cuba next week. So join us for that. Cuba's under attack. She's always been there for us. It's time for us to be there for her. The red and white QR code at the top left has APRP programs. I'm not sure how many of them are regularly functioning, but you know we're here every week. So go ahead and check that out, and you can find out and let us know. The Forward Ever shop, you can get clothes. You can get clothes with African revolutionary slogans on them. So please do that. Don't say that you already got something. You buy stuff for all these holidays from all these capitalist entities. So do it through the Revolutionary Party. Help us finance our work. Hood Communist Revolutionary Pan-African blog. Go there, support it. And then if you're in Sacramento area, Northern California, we have self-defense every Thursday night. Community self-defense. We did some great grappling work last week. I really want to, I need to print some waiver forms, which I'll have this week. We're going to start some contact sparring this week. So you should come out, learn how to do that, learn how to defend yourself. 2775 Cottage Way, like Cottage Cheese, Unit 15, 2775 Cottage Way, Unit 15, Sacramento, 6 to 8 p.m. every Thursday night. And then we want to invite you to African Liberation Day. You can go to www.africanliberationday.net. If you're not in Northern California, to find the commemoration closest to you, there are close to 30 happening around the world. So there is one close to you. There are virtual options, so check them out. But if you're here in Northern California, show up in person. The East Side Arts Alliance, 2277 International Boulevard, or East 14th if you're old school like me, in Oakland. Saturday, May 23rd, 1 to 4 p.m. We're going to have a wonderful program. So we want you to come out. And then, like Shakur said, donate to African Liberation Day in Africa. Our African Liberation Days in Africa, all throughout the African continent. The budgets have come in. We need your support. You can go to AAPRP at AAPRP on Venmo. AAPRP at AAPRP on Venmo. Make a donation to African Liberation Day in Africa. We have a number of commemorations happening on the African continent. Same theme, different languages. Revolutionary Pan-Africanism in worldwide solidarity for all oppressed people. Our struggle is one. So please support in all ways. Join the APRP, aprp-intl.org. You can get information there. And the bottom right, the black and white QR code, scan that to help the comrades in the Sahel region to bring in revolutionary literature. So do that. And then my book, A Guide for Organizing Defense Against White Supremacist, Patriarchal, and Fascist Violence. A Guide for Organizing Defense Against White Supremacist, Patriarchal, and Fascist Violence. There's a QR code for that. Just like the Forward Ever shop. Don't talk about, well, I already bought the book. Okay, that's the minimum there. We need you to help uplift the work. So if you bought it, thank you. But move forward with it. Start some book clubs. Get 2 or 3 other people to get the book. Contact your libraries. Have them order the book. Contact bookstores and have them. I've been saying this for weeks. I know nobody's done it because we don't follow through. That's why we're in the situation we're in. Let's follow through. If you ask me to do something, I would follow through. So follow through. That's how we lift up our capacity. So do that with the book, not because you're putting money in my pockets. I haven't spent a dime from book sales on anything for me. I spend all the money on supplies to do the work that we do, especially the self-defense classes, our events. We have food. Every event we do, we have food. Somebody has to pay for that. So 100% of the proceeds from the sale of this book go towards that. So help us. Gas money, everything. I'm going down here this Friday. I'm going to stay with Shakur Friday. We have an event. That's another event. It's a African United Front in the Bay Area. I don't have the flyer on the screen, but it's at the Black Panther Party Museum on Broadway Street in downtown Oakland, 5:30 on Friday night. You should come to that if you're in Northern California. So I'm going to come down to Shakura's place. We're going to catch Bart, go to that event, meet up with all the comrades in the APRP and the AUF, do that. Then we're going to go back to her house, and then Saturday we're going to toss out flyers for African Liberation Day at the Malcolm X Jazz Festival in Oakland. That requires gas money, food, all of these things. That's why we ask for your support. Donate to APRP at APRP Venmo to support our African Liberation Days in Africa. If you want to support the work locally, buy my book and get other people to buy it. And that's how we help fund that work. So thank you. Have a great rest of your day. Forward ever. Stay strong.